Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring puberty in girls.
Fascinating topic.
It is. We've got some excerpts here from the Merck Manual's consumer guides, and they're really great because they break down complicated medical stuff in a way that's easy for everyday people like us to understand.
Yeah.
So I think you're probably curious about the biological processes,
Yeah.
the timeline of everything, when does what happen,
Uh-huh.
and the things that make puberty start when it does.
Yeah, and it's interesting
Yeah.
because girls today actually start puberty earlier than they did like a century ago.
Really?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Wow. Okay, so before we get into all the specifics of the timeline and all that,
Okay.
let's just start with the basics.
Yeah.
What exactly is puberty?
Well, it's that bridge between childhood and adulthood.
Okay.
It's when girls develop all those physical characteristics that we think of as adult features.
Right.
And they gain the ability to reproduce. And this whole process is driven by hormones, these little chemical messengers.
Oh, so it's like the body's getting this whole new instruction manual.
Exactly.
Oh.
Like time to grow up.
Time to grow up.
Yeah. So early on in puberty, the pituitary gland, which is in the brain,
Uh-huh.
it kind of kicks things off.
Okay.
It starts releasing these hormones called luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone
Oh, wow.
in much higher amounts than before. And those hormones signal to the ovaries
Okay.
to start producing estrogen,
Uh-huh.
which is kind of the key player in all of female development.
Okay. So it's like this chain reaction.
Yeah.
One thing leads to the next.
We call it a hormonal cascade.
hormonal cascade.
And this cascade triggers a whole series of physical changes.
So if you're a young girl's body and you're getting ready for this big transformation,
Yeah.
what's the first sign that things are happening?
So typically the first noticeable change is breast development.
Yeah.
Sometimes we call it breast budding. And for most girls in the United States, this begins somewhere between the ages of 8 and 13.
Okay, so that's a pretty wide range.
It is a pretty wide range.
Yeah, so there's no need to worry if your friend starts a little earlier or later.
Exactly. Every girl's journey through puberty is unique.
Okay.
But shortly after breast development begins, you'll start to see pubic hair and underarm hair.
Okay, and then there's the growth spurt.
Yes. Usually right around the same time as the hair growth.
Uh-huh.
And here's something that's interesting. The fastest growth usually happens before menstruation begins,
Oh, wow.
peaking around age 12.
So it's the body's just getting everything ready.
Exactly. And this is where the Merck Manual has this really helpful chart called the milestones in sexual development.
Oh.
It shows the normal range for each of these milestones.
Okay.
So you can really see that there's a wide window for what's considered typical.
It's good to have that visual.
Yeah.
So we've got breast development, body hair growth spurt, and then menstruation starts a couple years after the breasts start developing.
Generally, yes. The time between that first breast budding and the first menstrual period, which is called menarche, is typically 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
On average, girls in the U.S. have their first period around age 13.
Okay.
But the normal range is actually anywhere from 10 to 16 years old.
Wow, that is a huge range.
Yeah.
Okay, so there really is no one size fits all.
Ooh.
So why is that?
That's a great question.
What causes some girls to hit puberty earlier than others?
So many factors. It's something that researchers have been looking into for years.
Okay, so what are some of them?
Well, one big one is nutrition.
Okay.
Girls who are overweight tend to start puberty earlier,
Okay.
while those who are significantly underweight or malnourished often start later.
But why would that be?
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
It seems like the body has a way of sensing whether it has enough resources available to support the demands of puberty. It's all about energy balance and having enough of those building blocks to support growth.
Okay.
And actually, it's one of the reasons why experts think that girls in the U.S. start puberty earlier today compared to a century ago.
Really?
Yeah. Improvements in nutrition and overall health have likely shifted that timeline.
So even small changes to our environment can impact our biology.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so nutrition's a factor. What else?
Genetics definitely play a role.
Okay.
If a girl's mother went through puberty early, she's more likely to as well. And ethnicity can also have an influence.
Okay.
Research shows that Black and Hispanic girls tend to start puberty earlier than Asian and white girls on average.
Okay, so we're talking genetics, ethnicity, even something as basic as nutrition.
It's complex.
Yeah, it really highlights how complex this whole process is.
It is.
And speaking of a big piece of the puberty puzzle,
Yeah.
let's talk about menstruation.
Okay.
I know this can be like a confusing topic for some girls, even a little scary for some girls. Can you break it down for us?
Of course, menstruation is basically the shedding of the uterine lining, which happens when an egg that's released from the ovary isn't fertilized.
Yeah.
It's a natural process that prepares the body for a potential pregnancy each month.
And it's important to remember that having irregular periods in those first few years is totally normal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It can take up to 5 years for those menstrual cycles to become regular.
Oh, wow.
So if you're in that early stage, don't stress if things aren't perfectly predictable yet.
Right.
Your body's still figuring it out.
Still figuring it out.
Yeah,
Okay, so we've been talking about this like typical course of puberty,
right.
but sometimes things don't go exactly according to plan.
That's true.
What happens when there's like hormonal imbalances?
That's when we start to see potential problems.
Okay.
There are two main categories: delayed puberty and early puberty.
And what causes those?
So delayed puberty is often caused by a deficiency in certain hormones, while early puberty results from an excess of hormones.
So are there any like warning signs that parents should be looking out for?
Yeah. If a girl hasn't shown any signs of breast development by age 13,
Okay.
or if she hasn't started menstruating by age 16, it's a good idea to consult with a doctor.
Okay.
On the other hand, if puberty starts really early, say before the age of 8,
Okay.
that's also a reason to seek medical advice.
Got it.
It's all about recognizing when things might be outside that typical range and getting the right support if needed.
Makes sense. It's reassuring to know that there are things you can do if those issues come up.
Yeah, definitely.
So we've talked about the hormonal cascade, the physical changes, even what happens when things go a little off track.
Yeah.
It really makes you appreciate how much is going on like beneath the surface.
It really is a lot.
It's amazing how this whole process, despite like how complex it is,
Right.
usually unfolds so seamlessly for most girls. It's like the body just knows what to do.
It's remarkable. It's like this intricate dance
Yeah.
of hormones in development,
Yeah.
all choreographed by the body's own wisdom.
Yeah. It really is remarkable. Like you said, like this intricate dance
Yeah.
of hormones in development, all choreographed by the body's own internal wisdom.
I love that analogy. It's like the pituitary gland is like the conductor of the puberty orchestra,
Exactly.
sending out all these hormonal signals to get the instruments playing.
Yes. And remember, even though we've been talking about this average timeline,
Right.
it's so important to remember that every girl's experience is unique. Some girls breeze right through it, while others might find it a bit more challenging. There's no right or wrong way to go through puberty.
Absolutely. Comparison really is the thief of joy,
It is.
especially when it comes to something as personal as this.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been talking about like the biology of it all,
Right.
but puberty isn't just about like the physical changes, is it?
No, not at all. It's also a time of really intense emotional and social development.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You know, girls are navigating all these new feelings and new relationships, a whole new sense of self.
Right.
And all of this is happening at the same time. Their bodies are going through these like dramatic transformations.
No wonder it can feel like such a roller coaster.
Exactly.
You've got hormones, bodies changing, and then you add in all those social pressures and expectations on top of that.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's why it's so important for adults to be sensitive and understanding during this time.
Okay, so like how can parents and caregivers best support girls through all of this?
I think the most important thing is communication.
Okay.
Create a safe and open space for girls to ask questions
Yeah.
and share their feelings without feeling judged.
And like make sure you're giving them accurate information.
Absolutely.
Right.
There are so many myths and misconceptions out there about puberty.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely provide accurate information. And also, don't underestimate the power of just listening. Let girls know that you're there for them, no matter what they're going through.
Yeah.
Sometimes just knowing that someone is in their corner can make all the difference.
It's true. Sometimes all you need is somebody to just listen without judgment.
Exactly.
Okay, but what about when things are tough?
Yeah.
Like, what if a girl's really struggling with the emotional or social aspects of puberty? Like, what can parents do?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to remember that it's normal to struggle.
Okay.
Puberty is a time of huge changes.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly natural to feel overwhelmed or insecure sometimes.
Right.
If a girl's having a particularly hard time talking to a therapist or counselor, it can be really helpful.
Okay.
They can provide that safe and supportive space to talk about what's going on
Oh.
and develop coping skills.
Yeah, sometimes having like a neutral person to talk to can be so valuable.
It can be.
Yeah. Okay, and what about for the girls themselves? Like,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to them?
Oh, gosh. I would say be kind to yourself.
Okay.
Puberty is a process, not a race. It's okay to feel awkward or uncomfortable at times.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody goes through it.
It's true.
You'll come out the other side stronger and more confident.
Right.
And don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it.
Yeah.
Talk to a trusted adult, whether that's a parent, a teacher, a counselor, anybody you trust.
Yeah.
If you're feeling overwhelmed, reach out to them.
Yeah. I think sometimes we forget how hard it can be to be a teenager,
We do.
especially when you're going through all these changes.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's a time of like incredible growth and transformation,
It is.
but it can also be really challenging.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've talked about like the biology, the emotions, the social side of things. But there's another layer to this whole thing that I think we should talk about, which is like the cultural context.
Yeah, you're right. We can't really talk about puberty without thinking about all those cultural messages
Right.
and societal expectations that girls are facing.
Exactly. Think about like all those media images, all the social pressures, those unrealistic beauty standards.
That's a lot.
It really is. It's no wonder so many girls feel self-conscious about their bodies.
And those messages start early.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even young girls are seeing all these images and getting all these ideas about what it means to be feminine and attractive.
Right.
It can be really tough to navigate all of that
Yeah.
while you're also just trying to figure out who you are and what you believe in.
It's like there's this constant pressure to conform,
There is.
to fit into this mold,
Yeah.
even though everyone's experience is so unique.
Right.
So how can we help girls kind of resist those harmful messages?
I think it starts with talking about it.
Okay.
We need to help girls understand that those media images are often manipulated. They're not realistic.
Right.
We can encourage girls to focus on their own values and what makes them feel good rather than try to meet someone else's definition of beauty.
I love that. It's all about helping girls develop that strong sense of self-worth and resilience.
Exactly.
So they can handle these challenges.
Yes. We need to empower girls to celebrate their differences and define beauty on their own terms.
That's such a great message. And you know what? What about those awkward moments?
Well, yeah.
They're like an inevitable part of puberty.
Right.
Like, remember that
Raj,
time?
I have some stories.
Oh, I'm sure you do. But you know what?
Right.
Looking back, those awkward moments always make for the best stories.
That is so true.
Right? They're like little badges of honor,
Yeah.
reminders of how far we've come.
Yeah, they really are. So we've talked about the biology, the emotions, the social pressures.
It's a lot.
It is. It seems like there's no like one-size-fits-all approach to puberty.
Not at all. It looks different for everybody.
It does. And that's why it's so important to remember that it's a normal process. It's natural. It's not something to be feared or ashamed of.
Absolutely. We need to create a culture where girls feel comfortable
Talking about their bodies and their experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it happens to every girl.
It does.
So why is it still such a taboo topic?
You're right.
Yeah.
We need to be more open about it.
Yeah.
Having these honest conversations about puberty can help dispel those myths and reduce the stigma
Right.
and empower girls to take ownership of their health.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into puberty in girls, what's like the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important thing is that puberty is a beautifully orchestrated process.
Okay.
It might seem complex, but it's guided by hormones and influenced by so many individual factors.
Right.
There's a huge range of what's considered normal.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's crucial to approach this stage of life with patience,
Yeah.
understanding, and open communication.
I love that. That's a perfect note to end on. So now that you understand like the typical course of puberty,
Yeah.
the things that can influence it,
All
what
right.
questions do you still have? We encourage you to keep learning, keep those conversations going, and just embrace this journey. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.